Now, efficiency is a really important concept in economics, and in AS economics there are two main types of efficiency you need to think about, and we have looked at both of them already. The first, which is productive efficiency, as you can see on the screen here, we looked at right at the start of the course. The one that we have considered a bit more recently is allocative efficiency, and it's important that whenever you're talking about efficiency in economics, you specify the type of efficiency you mean. They have very specific and very different meanings, so just throwing in the word efficiency into an answer is virtually guaranteeing yourself to lose out on analysis marks. You must talk about the correct form of efficiency. So let's just have a quick look at productive efficiency. So first of all, we'll go back to the start of the course. And remember, we talked about productive efficiency at the start of the course for a whole economy, for an entire economy. We talked about whether an economy was productively efficient or not. And the way we said that we established whether an economy was productively efficient or not was the extent to which it was using the available factors of production. And if you remember, we demonstrated this by drawing what we called a production possibility frontier, which had two goods on the axes, sometimes consumer and capital, sometimes good X, good Y, sometimes two different products and so on. And then basically what we did was we said that there is a boundary which indicates the amount that can be produced, or the combinations of these two goods which can be produced, if the economy is using all of its resources. So what we said was that any point along this PPF line, so wherever we are along this line here, all of those points, all of those white X points, they are productively efficient, because at all of those points the economy is using all of the factors of production which are available. So we say that the economy at that point is productively efficient. A point inside here, okay, this we would refer to as being productively inefficient position for a whole economy, because it resides within the PPF. And then anything outside of the PPF, so say up here, those indicate a position which is impossible given the current state of resources. So that's how we talked about productive efficiency across a whole economy. When we look at it in the production section of the course, we're looking at it in a slightly different way. We're looking at it for an individual firm. Okay, so at the start of the course we were looking at it for the whole economy. Now we're looking at it for an individual firm. And although there are definitely some overlaps between the two bits of theory, the way we identify this is slightly different. So for a firm, to be productively efficient means that we are producing our products, whatever they may be, for the lowest possible cost per unit. So that means when we add up all of the costs of production, so the costs of the various factors of production, the raw materials, the labour, the capital, the rent, etc., etc., etc. When we add up all of those and divide them by however many units we make, then we are producing at the lowest possible level of unit cost. And again, we can demonstrate this on a little diagram. We're going to talk more about this in a later video and kind of explain the shape of this a little bit more. But with these diagrams, you normally have money on the vertical axis, or cost and revenue, sometimes it's labelled, and you have output on the horizontal axis. And what we normally find is that for businesses, when they're very small, they are quite inefficient. They aren't able to take advantage of very many specialised factors of production, so their costs of production per unit are relatively high, up here somewhere, let's say. Okay, as they get bigger, they are able to benefit from more specialised equipment and so on, and their average cost of production will fall. But once they go beyond a certain size, once their output grows too big, then actually it starts to become a little bit difficult to coordinate, and actually the business then has to start spending money purely on coordinating the large scale of the business. And that obviously is going to add to the costs per unit. So what we often then find then is that the average costs start to rise again. And what you can see there is that often generates an average cost curve which is U-shaped like this. So if we've got an average cost curve which is U-shaped, as I say, I will explain why it's U-shaped in a little bit more detail in the next video, which deals with economies and diseconomies of scale. What you can see here is that there is a point down at the bottom here where average cost is at its lowest. So where average cost is at its lowest, that, we label that Q, that is the productively efficient level of output for this firm. Okay, so if this business produces Q, then they are producing at the point where the average cost, each unit of production, is as cheap as possible for them. If they were to produce less than that, okay, if they were only to produce Q1, let's say, okay, if they were only to produce Q1, then we can see that their costs of production would be higher. Okay, they would be P1 rather than P, and so they would not be productively efficient. So slightly different considerations there. Generally, it's all to do with kind of how well resources are being used. For an economy, though, we show it on a PPF. For a firm, we show it on a U-shaped curve, which we call the average cost curve. Now, one thing that I really do want to emphasize very, very strongly at this point is that neither of these diagrams tell us anything at all about allocative efficiency. It's a really common question, particularly with the productive efficiency in an economy, a PPF sort of curve, for you to get a multiple choice question about allocative efficiency. These diagrams, neither of them, tell us anything at all about the position which would be allocatively efficient. Okay? Allocatively efficient is about how the resources are used, how they are allocated between different uses. Neither of these diagrams tell us that. These diagrams purely tell us what the most productively efficient levels are. So on the left there, anything on the line is productively efficient, but we don't know whether each of those points are allocatively efficient. And on the right, the point at the bottom of the average cost curve is productively efficient. We don't know whether that is allocatively efficient or not. To establish whether it's allocatively efficient, we need an awful lot more information, and to carry on economics to A2.